I need to write this down before they find me, before the morning shift arrives and pretends everything is normal again. My name is Marcus Webb, and for the past 3 weeks, I've been the night janitor at the Jackson Red Line station in Chicago. What I'm about to tell you sounds impossible, but every word is true. The bruises on my arms are real, the scratches on the locker room door are real, and the thing that followed me home last night, God help me, that's real too. 3 weeks ago, I was drowning. Not literally, though some nights that might have been easier. My landlord had taped the final eviction notice to my door. Bright orange, impossible to miss. 48 hours to come up with $2,147 or find myself on the street in the middle of February. My 2004 Honda Civic had finally given up after 267,000 miles of faithful service, leaving me stranded on Lower Wacker during the polar vortex. The transmission repair estimate was more than the car's value. My ex-wife, Sarah, had cleaned out our joint savings before filing for divorce, claiming she needed it for her mother's medical bills. Turned out her mother had been dead for 2 years. I'd been sleeping on my cousin Derek's couch in Englewood, but his patience had run out along with my unemployment benefits. "Man, you gotta get your shit together," he'd said, not unkindly, while his kids ate breakfast around us. I can't keep feeding another mouth, not with Keisha pregnant again. That's when I saw the posting on Craigslist. I'd been scrolling through job listings on Derek's ancient laptop, the screen flickering every few seconds like it was possessed. Between the obvious scams and pyramid schemes, one listing stood out. Night janitor needed. Immediate start, Jackson Red Line Station, 32-hour plus. Benefits, 11 p.m., 7 a.m. shift. No experience required, must follow instructions. Precisely. Call Tom, 773-555-0147. $32 an hour for janitorial work. The Chicago Transit Authority's official website listed their janitor positions at $18.22 hourly. This had to be a mistake or a scam, but desperation has a way of making you ignore red flags. I called the number. Tom answered on the first ring, despite it being 2 a.m. His voice was flat, emotionless, like someone reading a script they'd memorized but never understood. "Jackson Station, night position. Can you start tomorrow?" Yes, but I have some questions about tomorrow, 10:30 p.m. sharp, employee entrance on the west side of the station. Bring a photo ID. He hung up before I could respond. The next night, I stood outside the Jackson station as late commuters rushed past, heads down against the biting wind. The employee entrance was a grey metal door with no signage, squeezed between a shuttered newsstand and a concrete pillar covered in old concert posters. At exactly 10:30, the door opened. Tom looked wrong. That was my first thought, though I couldn't immediately place why. He was tall, maybe 6'4", and thin in a way that suggested he'd been stretched rather than naturally grown. His CTA uniform hung loose on his frame, the fabric seeming to move independently of his body. His face was pleasant enough, mid-40s with graying temples, but his eyes never blinked during our entire conversation. Not once. "Marcus Webb," he said, not a question. "Follow." The employee area beneath the station was larger than I'd expected. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows in the corners. We passed through a break room that smelled of burnt coffee and something else, something sweet and rotten, like flowers left too long in a vase. A security office with monitors showing empty platforms. A supply closet that Tom's keycard wouldn't open, despite him trying 3 times. "That room isn't for you," he said, his first show of any emotion, a flash of something that might have been fear. We ended in a small office with a desk covered in dust except for one clean rectangle where a clipboard sat. Tom handed it to me. The rules. Memorized them. Followed them exactly. No exceptions, no interpretations, no creativity. The list was typed on official CTA letterhead, though the font kept changing sizes mid-sentence, like someone had compiled it from different documents. Night shift protocols. Jackson Station. Employee, Marcus Webb. Shift, 11 hours p.m., 7 hours a.m. rule. 1. Clock in at exactly 11 hours p.m. Not 10:59, not 11:01. The time card machine by the break room must register 11 bash. Rule 2. Begin your shift by mopping the north platform. Use only the grey mop bucket, never the red one. The red one belongs to someone else. Rule 3. If you hear piano music between midnight and 1 a.m., Do not investigate. Continue your assigned tasks. The music will stop on its own. Rule 4. The woman in the yellow dress may approach you on the south platform after 2 a.m. She will ask for directions to Merchandise Mart. Tell her, take the next Brown Line train. She doesn't know the Brown Line doesn't run at night. Don't correct this. Rule 5. Count the ceiling tiles in the main corridor every night. There should be 247. If there are more or fewer, leave the station immediately and call Tom. Do not return until the next shift. Rule 6. The supply closet door must remain locked between 3:33 a.m. and 4:44 a.m. If you hear knocking from inside during this time, do not respond. Do not look through the keyhole. Continue working on a different level. Rule 7. Clean the third pillar from the left on the north platform last, always last. If you clean it earlier, you must start your entire shift over, no matter the time. Rule 8. If a train arrives at 3:17 a.m., do not board it. Do not look directly at its windows. Do not acknowledge the conductor if he calls your name. This train is not on the schedule. Rule 9. The homeless man with the blue sleeping bag is allowed to stay. Give him 1 cup of coffee from the break room at 4 a.m., black, no sugar. His name is Carl, but he'll tell you it's different each night. Always call him Carl. Rule 10. Check the bathrooms every hour. If a stall door is locked but no feet are visible underneath, mark it with chalk and clean it last. The chalk is in your supply cart, 3rd drawer. Rule 11. Never run in the station after 2 a.m. Walking speed only. Running attracts attention you don't want. Rule 12. If you find personal items left behind, wallets, phones, bags, place them in the lost and found box in the security office. Do not look inside them, even if they're open, especially if they're open. Rule 13. The east stairwell has 32 steps going up, 33 going down. This is normal. Count them if you don't believe me, but only once per shift. Rule 14. At 5:55 a.m., stand on the north platform exactly where the 3rd door of the first car stops. Wait until 6 a.m. before moving. You'll understand when it happens. Rule 15. If everything else fails, if all the rules break at once, if IT gets out, there's a red button under the desk in the security office. Press it and run for the employee exit. Don't stop for anything. Don't look back. Your final paycheck will be mailed. I looked up from the clipboard. What happens if I break a rule? Tom's head tilted at an angle that seemed wrong, like his neck had too many joints. Follow the rules, Marcus Webb. Your shift starts in 7 minutes. He left without another word. I sat in that dusty office, reading and rereading the list, trying to convince myself this was just some elaborate hazing ritual. Maybe the regular janitors were watching on hidden cameras, laughing at the new guy who'd believe anything for $32 an hour. At 10:58, I walked to the break room. The time card machine was ancient, the kind with the actual paper cards you slide in. Mine was already there, my name printed in neat block letters. I watched the analog clock on the wall, its second hand sweeping toward midnight. At exactly 11 Wasamot, I punched in. The machine made a sound like a sigh. Night 1. The grey mop bucket was exactly where Tom had said it would be, tucked in the corner of the supply room. The red bucket sat beside it, and I'll admit I stared at it longer than I should have. It looked normal enough. Same industrial plastic, same wheels that squeaked when you pushed them. But there was something about it that made my skin crawl. Maybe it was the water inside, which I could hear sloshing despite the bucket appearing empty. Or maybe it was the way the mop handle leaned against it, wood worn smooth by countless hands, with deep grooves that looked almost like scratch marks. I filled the grey bucket with hot water and industrial cleaner, the chemical smell sharp enough to make my eyes water. The north platform stretched out before me, empty except for a few scattered newspapers and a coffee cup someone had left on a bench. Normal, mundane. I started mopping. The rhythm was soothing. Dip, ring, sweep, repeat. I'd done janitorial work before. Summers during high school at my uncle's office building. There was something meditative about it, watching dirt disappear, leaving clean tiles in neat rows. I was halfway down the platform when I heard it. Piano music. I checked my phone, 12:17 a.m. According to Rule 3, I had to ignore it. The melody was beautiful though, complex and sad, like something from a concert hall rather than a subway station. It seemed to be coming from below, maybe from the abandoned lower level I'd heard about, the one they'd closed in the 80s. The notes echoed through the ventilation grates, each one crystal clear despite the distance. I kept mopping. The music continued for exactly 43 minutes, stopping mid-note at 1 a.m. sharp. The silence that followed felt heavier than the quiet before, like the air itself was holding its breath. I was grateful when a late train rumbled through, breaking the spell. By 2 a.m., I'd moved to the south platform. My back ached from the repetitive motion, and I was thinking about taking a break when I saw her. The woman in the yellow dress stood at the far end of the platform, under a flickering light that made her appear to phase in and out of existence. The dress was from another era, 1950s maybe, with a full skirt and fitted bodice. She was pretty in an old-fashioned way, dark hair pinned up, pearl earrings catching the light. She walked toward me with measured steps, heels clicking on the concrete. Up close, I could see her lipstick was perfect. Not a smudge or fade despite the late hour. She smelled like gardenias. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft and cultivated, like an old movie star. "I'm trying to get to Merchandise Mart. Could you help me?" I gripped the mop handle tighter. "Take the next Brown Line train." She smiled, relief washing over her features. "Oh, thank you. I've been so confused. These late-night schedules are impossible to understand." She walked past me toward the stairs, her footsteps fading. I didn't watch her go. Something told me I didn't want to see what happened when she reached the exit. At 2:45, I started counting ceiling tiles in the main corridor. It was tedious work. The tiles were water-stained and some of the edges blurred together. I had to count 3 times to be sure. 247 each time. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I was heading back to the supply room when my phone buzzed. 3:33 a.m. Time to avoid the supply closet. I took my cart to the south platform instead, focusing on emptying trash bins and trying not to think about what might be behind that locked door. The knocking started at 3:35. 3 measured raps, a pause, then 3 more. The sound carried through the station, echoing off the walls. It wasn't frantic or desperate. It was patient, methodical, like someone who had all the time in the world. I focused on tying up a garbage bag, the plastic crinkling loud enough to almost drown out the sound. Almost. Marcus. My name, muffled but unmistakable, came from behind the supply closet door. The voice was wrong, too deep, too layered, like multiple people speaking in unison. "Marcus, I need the red bucket." I walked to the north platform, pushing my cart faster than I should have. Rule 11 said no running, but nothing about walking quickly. The knocking followed me, the sound seeming to come from the walls themselves now, from the pipes and ventilation grates and the spaces between the ceiling tiles. At 3:52, I saw the train. It approached from the north, headlight cutting through the tunnel darkness. But something was off. The light was too bright, too white, like staring at a welding torch. The train itself was wrong too. Older, with riveted steel sides and windows that were just black rectangles. No route number, no destination sign. It slowed as it passed, and I made the mistake of glancing at it from the corner of my eye. The windows weren't empty. Faces pressed against the glass, mouths open in silent screams, hands leaving bloody prints as they pawed at the windows. In the conductor's cabin, a figure in a CTA uniform turned to look at me. Its face was Tom's, but stretched and distorted, eyes too large, mouth too wide. "All aboard, Marcus Webb," it called, voice carrying despite the closed windows. "Last chance for the express service." I stared at my mop bucket, counting the tiles at my feet until the train passed. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rumbling faded, taking with it a smell like burnt copper and old meat. When I looked up, the platform was empty again. At 4 a.m. exactly, I found Carl. He was curled up near the stairs in a blue sleeping bag, so faded it was almost grey. His age was impossible to guess. Could have been 40, could have been 70. His beard was wild and grey, his clothes layers upon layers despite the heated station. He was awake when I approached, eyes tracking my movement with unusual clarity. "Coffee time already?" he asked, voice rough from disuse or damage. "Black, no sugar," I said, handing him the styrofoam cup I'd prepared. He took it with both hands, inhaling the steam. "You're new. Tom finally find a replacement for Melissa." "What happened to Melissa?" Carl sipped his coffee. "Same thing that happens to everyone who breaks the rules. She thought she was smarter than them, thought she could figure out the pattern, the reason. He looked at me with eyes that were too knowing. There's no pattern, son, no reason, just rules. Follow them and you might last longer than she did. How long have you been coming here? He laughed, a sound like grinding gears. Coming here? Oh, son, I don't come here, I can't leave. He pulled down his sleeping bag to reveal his legs. They ended at the knees, the stump smooth and rounded like melted wax. Broke Rule 11 back in '87. Ran from something I should have walked away from. It caught me at the turnstiles. Tom was different then, still had both his original eyes. He made a deal. I get to stay, and in exchange, he trailed off, pulling the sleeping bag back up. In exchange, I'm the early warning system. When things get bad, really bad, I scream. Gives whoever's on shift about 30 seconds to hide. He finished his coffee in one long pull. Haven't had to scream in 3 years. Hope I don't have to for you. I wanted to ask more, but Carl had already turned away, burrowing deeper into his sleeping bag. I could hear him muttering something, the same phrase over and over. The third pillar last, always the third pillar last. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of routine tasks. I checked bathrooms. One stall in the men's room was locked with no feet visible. I marked it with chalk. Emptied trash, swept the stairs. 32 up, 33 down, just as promised. By 5:45, exhaustion weighted my limbs like lead. At 5:55, I stood on the north platform where I estimated the third door of the first car would stop. I wasn't sure what to expect, maybe nothing. Maybe this was just another part of the hazing. At exactly 6 a.m., the temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant. My breath came out in clouds. The fluorescent lights flickered, and in the strobing darkness, I saw them. They stood in a perfect line where the train would be, dozens of figures in outdated clothing. Men in fedoras and suspenders, women in day dresses and pillbox hats, children in their Sunday best. They were translucent, like looking through dirty glass. They all stared at the same spot on the tracks, waiting. They'd been waiting since 1977, a voice said beside me. I jumped, nearly breaking Rule 11 in my shock. A young woman stood there, solid, unlike the others. She wore a modern CTA uniform with a name tag reading Melissa. Carl said you broke the rules. She smiled sadly. I did. Cleaned the third pillar second to last instead of last. Seemed like such a small thing. She gestured to the waiting figures. Blue Line crash, February 4th, 1977. Train derailment during rush hour. 43 dead. They gather here every morning at 6, waiting for the train that never comes to take them to work. But this is the red line. Now it is. Stations change, tracks get rerouted, but the dead remember the original paths. She started to fade as the clock clicked to 6:01. Follow the rules, Marcus. Every single one. The station needs a janitor, and it doesn't like to let them go. The ghost vanished with her, leaving me alone on the platform as the first legitimate morning train pulled in, full of early commuters heading to work. Night 2, I almost didn't come back. Spent the whole day in Derek's apartment, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it all. Hallucinations from the cleaning chemicals, exhaustion playing tricks. But the $250 direct deposit in my checking account was real. One night's work, enough to keep Derek happy for another week. I punched in at exactly 11 C. The time card machine made that sighing sound again, but this time I heard something else underneath it, a whisper that might have been, "Welcome back." Tom was in the break room, standing in the exact same spot I'd first seen him, like he'd never moved. "Second night," he said. "Most don't come back after the first. I need the money." "They all do." He handed me a folded paper. "Additional rules. These apply starting tonight." I unfolded it, noting the paper felt strange, too thick, almost fabric-like. Addendum. Second week protocols. Rule 16. The rats in the tunnels are not rats. Do not feed them, no matter how hungry they sound. Rule 17. If the lights in the east corridor turn red, close your eyes and count to 30 before proceeding. What passes through during red light periods doesn't like to be observed. Rule 18. Should you encounter yourself on the platform, do not engage. It's not you. It's learning to be you. Rule 19. The payphone near the south exit will ring at 2:47 a.m. Let it ring exactly 9 times, then answer. Say, wrong number, and hang up. Do not listen to what the caller says. Rule 20. Every third night, leave a ham sandwich, no mustard, on the bench nearest the employee entrance. It will be gone by morning. This is the toll. Why wasn't I given these last night? Tom's unblinking stare seemed to go through me. You weren't ready. First night is to see if you can follow basic instructions. Second night is to see if you can adapt. He left before I could ask what the third night tested. I started with the north platform, grey bucket in hand. The red bucket had moved. Now it sat in the middle of the supply room, impossible to avoid seeing. Water sloshed inside it despite still appearing empty. I grabbed my supplies quickly and left. The piano music started earlier tonight, 11:47 p.m. It was different this time, faster, almost manic. The notes crashed and tangled, like someone playing with broken fingers. I focused on my mopping, but the music wormed into my head, making my movements unconsciously match its rhythm. You hear it too. I spun around. A man sat on one of the benches, though I was certain the platform had been empty moments before. He wore an expensive-looking suit from maybe the 1960s, perfectly pressed despite being covered in dust. His fingers moved in the air, playing an invisible piano. I told them the acoustics would be perfect down here, he continued. The abandoned level, I mean. Natural reverb from the tunnels. They let me set up a Steinway back in '82, said I could play during maintenance hours when no passengers would complain. His fingers never stopped moving. I noticed they bent in too many places, like each finger had extra joints. What happened? I asked, though I knew I probably shouldn't engage. I played too well, attracted an audience I didn't expect. His fingers moved faster, that manic melody filling the air. They came from the deep tunnels, the ones that don't appear on any map. They loved my music, loved it so much they took me with them when they left. But they let me visit some nights, let me play for whoever's here. The music stops at 1 a.m. That's when they call me back, down to the deep places where the tracks go in circles and the trains never stop. His form flickered like bad reception. If you ever hear the music change to a waltz, run. That means they're coming up to dance. He vanished between one blink and the next, but the music continued until exactly 1 a.m. I was cleaning the women's bathroom when I heard the announcement. The PA system crackled to life, though I'd been told it shut down after midnight. Attention passengers, the 2:15 a.m. service to Howard has been delayed due to track maintenance. We apologize for the inconvenience. There was no 2:15 a.m. service. The train stopped running at 1:30 a.m. and didn't start again until 4:30 a.m. I continued scrubbing the sinks, trying to ignore the woman who was suddenly reflected in the mirror behind me. She wore a CTA uniform, but it was wrong. Too many buttons, fabric that seemed to shift between blue and black, depending on the angle. Her face was pleasant but unmemorable, like a composite of every face you'd ever seen. "You're doing well," she said, though her lips didn't quite sync with the words. "Better than the last 3. 3? Oh yes. Tom's been through 3 janitors this month. Well, parts of them. The rest are elsewhere." She leaned closer to the mirror, and I could see through her to the stall doors beyond. "Would you like some advice?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. The third pillar isn't about cleaning. It's about feeding time. Whatever you do, don't look up when you're mopping around it. And if something drops from above, let it land. Let it take what it needs. The alternative is worse. She walked backward out of the mirror, disappearing into the reflection of the hallway. I finished cleaning in record time. At 2:47 a.m. exactly, the payphone rang. It was an old rotary model that looked like it hadn't been used since the 90s. I counted the rings, 7, 8, 9, then picked up the heavy handset. Breathing, wet, labored breathing, like someone with lungs full of water. "Wrong number," I said. "Marcus." The voice was my father's, but that was impossible. He'd been dead for 5 years. "Marcus, I'm at the station, the other station. Come down to the 3rd level. I need to show you something." "Wrong number," I repeated, my hand shaking. "Your mother's here too. We're all here, Marcus. Everyone who ever died in the tunnels. Come down. The door's open. The supply closet door is open right now." I slammed the phone down, checked the time, 3:14 a.m. The supply closet wasn't supposed to unlock for another 19 minutes. I stayed on the south platform until 3:35, just to be safe. The woman in the yellow dress appeared at exactly 2 a.m. again, asked the same question, accepted the same answer, but this time, as she walked away, I caught a glimpse of the back of her dress. It was torn and stained with what looked like old blood, as if she'd been dragged. She left wet footprints that evaporated within seconds. At 3:33, I was ready. I'd positioned myself on the lower level, as far from the supply closet as possible while still being able to work. The knocking started immediately. Marcus. Different voice this time. Younger, female. Marcus, please. It's so dark in here. I've been in here since Tuesday. Please just open the door. I knew there had been a missing person report. A college student, Rebecca Chen, had disappeared from the Roosevelt station 3 days ago. Last seen on security cameras entering the platform but never boarding a train. Please, the voice continued. I can hear you out there. I know you can hear me. They put me in here. The things that use the red bucket. They're keeping me for something. Please, before they come back. The temptation was almost overwhelming. What if she was really in there? What if I could save her? My hand was on the door handle before I caught myself. 3:35 a.m., still within the forbidden window. I'm sorry, I whispered. The voice changed instantly, becoming something inhuman, multitonal. You'll be sorry when it's your turn in here. When they stuff you in with the others and you scream and no one helps because of the stupid fucking rules. The knocking became pounding, the door shaking in its frame. I could see the hinges starting to bend. Then, at exactly 4:44 a.m., silence. The door looked normal again, as if nothing had happened. Carl was awake when I brought his coffee, sitting up with his back against the wall. Heard the closet having a fit, he said. You didn't open it. Smart. What's in there? Nothing. Everything. Depends on when you look. He sipped his coffee thoughtfully. The station's hungry, you know. Has been since they dug too deep in the 70s. Hit something that should have stayed buried. The rules keep it fed just enough to stay calm. Break them, and it gets to feed on you instead. What did they find? Carl shook his head. Better not to know, but I'll tell you this. There's a reason this station has the highest employee turnover in the system, and it ain't the pay. I spent the rest of my shift on routine tasks, counting ceiling tiles, still 247, checking bathrooms, emptying trash, but everywhere I went, I felt watched, not just by cameras, by the station itself, like the walls had eyes. At 5:55 a.m., I stood in position on the north platform. The ghost commuters appeared at 6 o'clock sharp, but this time I noticed something new. One of them, a little boy in shorts and suspenders, turned to look at me. His mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. He pointed at the third pillar, then drew his finger across his throat. When they vanished at 6:01, I looked at the pillar. Fresh scratches in the concrete spelled out, "Don't trust Tom." Night 3. The ham sandwich sat in my backpack like a lead weight. White bread, ham, cheese, lettuce, tomato. No mustard, as specified. I'd made it that afternoon while Derek's kids watched cartoons, wondering what kind of thing ate ham sandwiches as a toll. Tom was waiting by the timecard machine when I arrived. His stillness was even more pronounced tonight. I watched him for a full 30 seconds and never saw his chest move to breathe. "Third night," he said. "The important one. Why? 3 is a powerful number. 3 nights to learn, 3 chances to fail, 3 seconds between breaking a rule and consequences." He held out another paper. "Final editions. After tonight, you'll have the complete set. Final protocols, 3rd night and beyond. Rule 21. If the floor beneath you becomes soft, like walking on flesh, step only on the yellow safety lines until it solidifies. Rule 22. The thing that calls itself Maintenance Mike will appear weekly. Give him your time card to sign. Do not look at what he uses instead of hands. Rule 23. Should all lights fail simultaneously, stand still and recite the station stops in order from Howard to 95th. The lights will return when you finish. Rule 24. If you find human teeth on the platform, sweep them up without counting them. The number is always wrong, and knowing it changes things. Rule 25. At the winter solstice, summer solstice, and both equinoxes, an additional Rule 26 applies. You'll know it when you need it. I looked up from the paper. That's only 25 rules. For now. Tom's head tilted. The station adds rules as needed. Melissa made it to 37 before she stopped. I placed the ham sandwich on the designated bench at 11:05. By 11:07, it was gone. I didn't see what took it, just a shadow that moved wrong, sliding up the wall and across the ceiling before descending on the bench. The only evidence was a wet spot that smelled like sulfur. Tonight, the piano music was a waltz. My blood turned to ice. The pianist had warned me, when the music becomes a waltz, run. But Rule 11 said no running after 2 a.m. It was 11:45 p.m. I had 15 minutes. I abandoned my mop bucket and walked as fast as I could toward the employee area. Behind me, the waltz grew louder and I could hear something else. Footsteps, dozens of them, moving in time to the music. They were coming up from the abandoned level, up through the closed stairwells and ventilation shafts. I made it to the break room and shut the door, pressing my back against it. Through the small window, I could see them flooding onto the platform. They looked human at first glance, dressed in formal wear from different eras. Victorian gowns, 1920s tuxedos, 1950s cocktail dresses. But their movements were wrong. They danced with partners who weren't there, or perhaps were invisible, twirling and dipping in perfect synchronization to the waltz. One couple passed close to the break room window. The man's face was perfect from the nose up, but below that, his jaw hung loose like a snake's, revealing rows of teeth going down his throat. His partner, a woman in a green ball gown, had no face at all, just smooth skin where features should be. They danced until exactly midnight, then filed back down to wherever they'd come from, the music fading with them. When I finally emerged, the platform was covered in what looked like gold dust. It vanished the moment my mop touched it. The woman in yellow came at 2 a.m. as always, but tonight she wasn't alone. A small girl held her hand, maybe 6 or 7, wearing a Catholic school uniform. The girl's eyes were completely black, no whites at all. "Excuse me," the woman said, with her practiced smile. "I'm trying to get to Merchandise Mart. Could you help me?" "Take the next Brown Line train," I responded. "Thank you." She started to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and this is my daughter, Lucy. Say hello, Lucy." The girl's mouth opened wider than any human mouth should, revealing darkness that seemed to go on forever. "Hello, Marcus," she said in a voice like grinding stone. "See you soon." They walked away, and I tried not to think about what soon might mean. At 2:47, I was ready for the payphone. 9 rings, then I picked up. "Wrong number," I said immediately. "Not this time." The voice was Tom's, but different. Emotional, urgent. "Marcus, this is really Tom, the real Tom. I'm trapped in the lower levels, the thing wearing my face, working my shifts. It's not me. It hasn't been me for months." My hand trembled on the receiver. "I know you're supposed to say wrong number and hang up," the voice continued. "But please, listen. Check the security office. Bottom drawer of the desk, under the false bottom. There's a journal. Melissa's journal. She figured it out before they got her." The line went dead. I stood there holding the receiver, paralyzed by indecision. It could be a trick, something trying to make me break the rules. Or it could be the truth. I compromised. I checked the security office, but not until my shift was almost over. Less time for consequences if it was a trap. The supply closet started its knocking at 3:33, but tonight it was different. Instead of knocking, something was scratching at the door from inside. Long, deliberate scratches that formed letters. I watched from down the hall as words appeared in the wood. "Let me out or you're next" at 3:52. I noticed the ceiling tiles. There were 249, 2 extra. I grabbed Tom's emergency number, my fingers shaking as I dialed. "Leave the station," Tom's flat voice said without preamble. "Return tomorrow." But my shift, leave, now. I didn't need to be told twice. But as I headed for the exit, the floor began to change. The solid concrete became soft, yielding under my feet like flesh. I could feel it pulse with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Rule 21, step only on the yellow safety lines. I balanced on the narrow yellow line, arms out like a tightrope walker. The floor on either side had become translucent, and beneath it, I could see something massive moving. It looked like intestines at first, but then I saw the eyes, hundreds of them, all looking up at me through the semi-transparent floor. The yellow line led to the exit, but it took me past the 3rd pillar. I still hadn't cleaned it. It was supposed to be last. Always last. But I wasn't finishing my shift, so did that rule still apply? Something dripped from above as I passed the pillar. Red, viscous, definitely not water. It splattered next to my foot on the yellow line. I didn't look up. The woman in the bathroom mirror had warned me not to. More drops. The sound of something feeding. Wet, tearing noises from above. A solid chunk of something hit the floor with a meaty thwop. I kept my eyes on the yellow line, following it to the exit. I made it out just as the station's clock struck 4:44. Behind me, I heard the supply closet door slam open, followed by a sound like 1,000 voices screaming in harmony. I didn't go back the next night. Spent the day apartment hunting with the money I'd earned. Found a studio in Uptown that didn't ask too many questions about references. Put down a deposit, packed my few belongings. Derek was relieved to have his couch back. I was relieved to be alive. But the station wasn't done with me. Night 4. The phone calls started 3 days after I'd abandoned my shift. My new apartment had no landline, but that didn't matter. My cell would ring at 11 p.m. exactly. No number, just unknown caller. First night, the station misses you, Marcus. Second night, your replacement didn't last 3 hours. Third night, final warning. On the fourth night, I found Carl in my apartment. He was sitting in my one chair, still wrapped in his faded blue sleeping bag, the stumps of his legs visible. The smell hit me first. Unwashed body, coffee, and something else. That sweet rot smell from the station. They sent me to collect you, he said, without preamble. You've been selected. Selected for what? Same thing we're all selected for. The station needs a permanent night janitor. Someone who knows all the rules, follows them perfectly, becomes part of the system. He shifted, and I heard something squish. Tom's been doing it for 15 years, but his time's up. The station wants fresh blood. Tom's been there for 15 years. Carl laughed, that grinding gears sound. No, Tom's been dead for 15 years. The thing wearing his skin has been there that long. Just like the thing that wore Patricia's skin before him, and Robert's before that. He pulled out a folded paper from inside his sleeping bag. It was wet with something dark. Employment contract. Sign it, or they'll come collect you anyway. At least if you sign, you get to keep your mind. Mostly. I looked at the contract. The text kept shifting, words rearranging themselves as I tried to read. Only one line stayed constant. Term of employment, until replacement found. How long does it take to find a replacement? Depends on how good you are at training them. Tom trained 6 people before you. 5 died, 1 ran. You ran, but you also lasted 3 nights. That makes you special. Carl wheeled himself toward my door. I hadn't noticed the wheelchair before, hidden under his sleeping bag. You have until tomorrow night to decide. Sign and report for your shift, or don't sign and, well, you've seen what happens to people who break the rules. After he left, I went to the library and researched the Jackson station. The articles I found made my blood run cold. 1977, platform collapse during construction of lower level. 7 workers never found. 1982, pianist Anthony Morrison disappears after late night practice session in abandoned section. 1987, security guard Carl Washington found mutilated near turnstiles. Survived, but legs had to be amputated due to unusual tissue damage. 1994, 3 teenagers exploring closed sections never emerge. Bodies never recovered. 2001, night janitor Patricia Holmes found dead in supply closet. Cause of death, massive internal displacement. 2008, janitor Robert Kim disappears. Security footage shows him entering station but never leaving. Tutti Filmfish. TT15, multiple reports of Tom Matthews working at station, despite Thomas Matthews dying in industrial accident in 2009. Tutti Sansi Spymoshi 2000. TT19, janitor Melissa Chang disappears after 3 weeks of employment. Every date corresponded to someone in the stories I'd been told. Everyone who'd broken the rules or been selected. The station had been feeding for decades. I didn't sign the contract. Instead, I did something stupid. I went back to the station that night with a plan. Night 5, the return. I entered through the main entrance at 10:45 p.m., not the employee door. The public area was still open, a few late travelers waiting for the last trains. I had a backpack full of supplies. Salt, probably useless, but worth trying. A flashlight with extra batteries. a crowbar, matches, lighter fluid, and Melissa's journal, which I'd retrieved from the security office during the day shift when a different guard was on duty. The journal was illuminating. Melissa had been a graduate student in folklore, took the job specifically to investigate the rumors. Her notes were meticulous. Day 3. The rules aren't random. They're a binding contract, each one a thread in a web. Break one thread, the web weakens. Break enough. Day 7. Found references to something called the Hunger in maintenance records from 1976. They dug too deep, hit a natural cave system. Something was living down there, something old. Day 15. The third pillar isn't just lost, it's a seal. Clean it too early, and the seal weakens. The hunger can reach through. That's what takes people. Day 18. Tom isn't Tom. Confirmed it today. Real Tom's body is in the lower level, perfectly preserved. The thing wearing his face is a keeper, a human-shaped appendage of the hunger. It maintains the rules, keeps the system running. Day 20. Found the original contract in city archives. Chicago Transit Authority made a deal in 1977 after the collapse. Feed the hunger regularly through small violations, minor sacrifices, and it won't surface. To feed on the entire city, the station is a containment system. Day 21. There's a way to break it. Every winter solstice, the contract can be challenged. The challenger must. The entry cut off. The next page was torn out. I waited until 11:12, then made my way to the employee area. Tom was there, standing in his usual spot, head tilted at that unnatural angle. Marcus Webb, you didn't sign the contract. No, but I'm here to finish my shift, the one I started 3 nights ago. His face did something that might have been surprise. That's irregular, but not against the rules. He stood there for 30 seconds, completely still. Then, clock in. I punched my time card at 11:47. The machine wheezed. The station felt different, angrier. The lights flickered constantly, and I could hear things moving in the walls. The piano music started immediately. Not a waltz, but something discordant and sharp, like someone playing with broken keys. I went straight to the third pillar. According to Melissa's journal, it was a seal. The last line of defense keeping the hunger contained to the station. Clean it too early, and the seal weakens. But what if you didn't clean it at all? The woman in yellow appeared early, at 11:30 instead of 2 a.m. She didn't ask for directions. Instead, she stood there, staring at me with eyes that had started to bleed. "You're breaking the pattern," she said. "We don't like when the pattern breaks. You're already dead. What's the worst that could happen?" She laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "Death was the easy part. It's what comes after that hurts." More entities began appearing. The dancers from the waltz, the faces from the 317 train, things I'd never seen before. They surrounded me but didn't approach. They were waiting for something. At midnight, the station shook. Not like a train passing, but like an earthquake. Ceiling tiles fell, revealing not infrastructure but darkness. Pure, living darkness that seemed to breathe. "You broke the rules." Tom's voice, but amplified, coming from everywhere at once. "The hunger must be fed." "Then let it feed on you," I shouted back, pulling out Melissa's journal. "You're not Tom, you're just another prisoner, aren't you? A human who signed the contract decades ago, transformed into a keeper. When someone new signs, you get to die. Finally die." Tom appeared in front of me, moving faster than anything human. But up close, I could see the truth. Under the skin that looked like Tom, there were eyes, human eyes, terrified and pleading. "Help me," a voice whispered from inside Tom's mouth, a different voice, older. "Been here so long, can't remember my name." The station shook again. Cracks appeared in the floor, spreading out from the third pillar. Through them, I could see something rising. The hunger. It didn't have a shape, not really. It was absence itself, a void that hurt to perceive. But around its edges, I could see the truth. All the people it had taken over the decades, their faces pressed against some invisible barrier, mouths open in eternal screams. "Feed," it said in a voice that was all voices, none voices, the absence of voice. That's when I remembered the winter solstice was tomorrow. December 21st, Melissa had said the contract could be challenged then. I just had to survive until midnight. I ran. Rule 11, be damned. The chase. The station transformed as I ran. Corridors stretched impossibly long. Stairs led up but deposited me lower. Doors opened onto brick walls or gaping voids. Behind me, the hunger pursued, not quickly but inevitably, consuming the station as it came. I found Carl in his usual spot, but he was standing, on legs made of shadow and static. "You figured it out," he said sadly. "I hoped you wouldn't. You're one of them, a keeper. Was human once, signed a contract in 1987 to save my wife from cancer. Didn't read the fine print." His shadow legs flickered. "But you're right about the solstice. If you can survive until midnight tomorrow, you can challenge the original contract, break the binding." "Why help me?" "Because I'm tired, Marcus. We're all tired. Even the hunger is tired, feeding on scraps when it wants to feast. The balance is breaking down anyway. Might as well let it shatter completely." He handed me a key. "Supply closet, the real one, not the thing that knocks. Lower level, behind the maintenance panel. You'll find what you need." The hunger reached Carl just as I took the key. He didn't scream as it consumed him. He smiled. I ran for the lower level, taking stairs that shouldn't exist, following signs that changed languages as I passed. The abandoned platform was darker than dark, but my flashlight carved out a small sphere of visibility. The maintenance panel was where Carl had said. Behind it, a narrow corridor that smelled of age and dampness. At the end, a door marked Original Infrastructure, 1976. Inside was an office frozen in time. Wood paneling, orange carpet, a desk with a rotary phone, and on the wall, a contract in a glass case. Agreement between the Chicago Transit Authority and untranslatable. Dated February 5th, 1977. The terms were complex, written in legalese that hurt to read, but the core was simple. Regular feeding through the rule system in exchange for containment. Small sacrifices to prevent large-scale catastrophe. But there was a clause, Section 6, Subsection J. This agreement may be challenged by a mortal representative during the liminal period of solar transition, solstices and equinoxes. The challenger must survive until the moment of transition while breaking all binding rules. Should they succeed, the agreement becomes void. All the rules. I had to break every single rule while surviving until the moment of winter solstice, tomorrow at 11:27 p.m. The hunger's voice echoed through the station. "You cannot hide in the past, Marcus Webb." I grabbed the contract, the glass case shattering at my touch. The paper felt alive, writhing in my hands like it wanted to return to its frame. I stuffed it in my backpack and ran deeper into the lower level. The abandoned platform was a maze of half-finished tunnels and storage rooms. I found evidence of the 1977 collapse, construction equipment still covered in dust, hard hats with names stenciled on them, and in one corner, 7 lunchboxes arranged in a circle like a shrine. Behind the lunchboxes was another journal, this one much older. The leather cover was stained with what looked like blood. Property of Robert Kim, night supervisor, January 2008. If you're reading this, you're probably fucked, but maybe not. I've been here 11 years. First as janitor, then as supervisor after Patricia. Changed. The rules aren't just rules, they're programming. The station is alive, see? The hunger isn't separate from it. The station is the hunger, or at least its physical manifestation in our world. The third pillar, it's not a seal, it's a feeding tube. Every time someone cleans it last, they're completing a ritual, sending a pulse of energy down to the thing below. Skip it, and the thing starts to starve. Starve it long enough, it surfaces. But here's what Melissa didn't know. There's a second contract, an older one. Predates the CTA agreement by 100 years. From when they first built the tunnels for the cable cars. That contract is why the hunger can't just leave, can't just consume the city. It's bound to the underground, to the tunnels themselves. Find the cable car station. It's walled off, but the wall is thin near the third pillar. That's not a coincidence. Everything connects at the third pillar. The journal ended there. The last entry was dated the night Robert disappeared. I made my way back to the main platform, the hunger's presence making the air thick and hard to breathe. The third pillar stood there, innocuous looking except for the scratches and stains that covered it. I ran my hand along its base until I found what Robert had described, a section that sounded hollow when tapped. The crowbar made quick work of the plaster. Behind it was old brick, and behind that, a narrow passage that smelled of rust and age. I squeezed through. The cable car station was a cavern frozen in the 1890s. Wooden platforms, iron tracks, advertisements for products that hadn't existed for a century. And in the center, a stone altar that definitely didn't belong to any transit system. The altar was covered in symbols that hurt to look at, geometries that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. On top of it sat a leather-bound book and a human skull wearing a conductor's cap. The book was handwritten in multiple languages. Some I recognized, most I didn't, but one section was in English. The binding of the below thing, as negotiated by the Chicago Tunnel Company. 1898, the below thing, hereafter referred to as the hunger, agrees to limit its feeding to those who enter its domain between the hours of sunset and sunrise. In journal exchange, the company agrees to provide regular sustenance through a system of obligations. See Appendix A. The rules. This binding shall remain in effect until 1. The physical anchor, the altar, is destroyed. 2. A mortal willingly takes the hunger's place. 3. All rules are broken simultaneously by one who has been marked. I'd been marked the moment I took the job. Every janitor was marked, branded as potential food or potential replacement. But if I could break all the rules at once, the station screamed. Not metaphorically. The walls themselves opened mouths and screamed, a sound that made my ears bleed. The hunger had found me. The thing that crawled through the passage wasn't Tom anymore. It had abandoned all pretense of human form. It was a collection of faces and limbs, all the people it had absorbed over the years, twisted together into something that violated every law of physics and biology. You will feed us, it said with 100 mouths. I pulled out the lighter fluid and matches. Wrong. I'm going to starve you. I doused the altar in lighter fluid, but before I could light it, the thing was on me. Hands that weren't hands grabbed my wrists. Faces that weren't faces pressed close. I could smell decades of death on its breath. Wait. One voice, clearer than the others. From somewhere in the mass of flesh, Melissa's face emerged, still recognizable despite being part of the collective. The solstice isn't until tomorrow night. If you destroy the altar now, the hunger just gets released. No rules, no binding, nothing to stop it. Then what? Break the rules, all of them, in order, while the hunger chases you. If you can break them all and survive until 11:27 p.m. tomorrow, both contracts become void. The station loses its power, the hunger gets pulled back to wherever it came from, and everyone trapped here gets freed. The thing that had been, Tom reasserted control, pulling Melissa's face back into the mass. Lies! Break the altar! Free us! But I trusted Melissa. She'd been trying to save everyone, not just herself. I ran back through the passage, the hunger pursuing but moving slower now, as if Melissa was fighting it from within. I had 22 hours to prepare, and 25 rules to break. December 21st, the solstice, I spent the day preparing, bought supplies, studied the rules, planned my route through the station. Called Derek and told him if I didn't call back by midnight to stay away from the Jackson station forever. He thought I was having a breakdown, but promised. I arrived at 10:45 p.m., entering through the employee door. Tom was there, or rather, the thing wearing what was left of Tom. It had given up maintaining a fully human appearance. Its face kept sliding, features rearranging themselves. You came back. Its voice was a harmony of all the voices it had absorbed. I'm going to end this. You're going to try. I looked at my list of rules, all 25 of them. I had 42 minutes to break them all. Rule 1, clock in at exactly 11 p.m. I punched in at 10:58:17. The machine sparked, shooting electricity up my arm. Rule 2, begin with the north platform, grey mop bucket only. I grabbed the red bucket and headed to the south platform. The water inside was blood, thick and coagulated. When I started mopping, the floor began to dissolve. Rule 3, ignore piano music between midnight and 1 a.m. It wasn't midnight yet, but I descended to the abandoned level, finding the dusty Steinway. I sat down and played, badly, just crashing my hands on the keys. The pianist appeared, his face contorted in rage. "You're ruining it," he shrieked. "The music must be perfect." "Nothing's perfect," I said. continuing my assault on the keys. That's why you're trapped here. Rule 4. Tell the woman in yellow to take the brown line. She appeared instantly when I broke Rule 3, as if bad piano playing summoned her. I'm trying to get to... Take the red line north to Howard, transfer to the purple line, and go fuck yourself, I said. She stood there, shocked. Then she laughed, a real laugh, not her practice one. Oh, thank God, someone finally told me the truth. I've been dead for 30 years, haven't I? 1994, platform accident. I thought so. The dress never got dirty, you see. She began to fade, but not in the usual way. She was dissolving into light. Thank you. Rule 5. Count 247 ceiling tiles. I didn't count them at all. Instead, I took my crowbar to them, smashing everyone I could reach. Above them wasn't infrastructure, it was flesh. The station's flesh, pulsing and bleeding where I damaged it. Rule 6. Keep supply closet locked from 3:33 4:44 a.m. It was 11:15 p.m. I went to the closet and not only opened it, but propped it open with my crowbar. Inside was nothing. Literally nothing. A void that seemed to go down forever. But as I watched, something began climbing up from the depths. Rule 7. Clean the third pillar last. I'd already broken this one by going straight to it earlier. The pillar was cracking now, pieces falling away to reveal something organic underneath, like a massive artery. Rule 8. Don't board the 3:17 a.m. train. I couldn't wait for 3:17, so instead I went to the platform and called out, "Hey, unscheduled train, whatever you are, I want to board." The ghost train materialized immediately, as if it had been waiting. The doors opened, revealing the compressed, screaming souls inside. I stepped on. The sensation was like being turned inside out. Every person who'd ever died on this train was trying to occupy the same space, and now I was part of that space. I could feel their deaths, heart attacks, suicides, accidents, murders, all of them trapped in an endless loop of their last moments. But I could also feel their hope. If I succeeded, they'd be free. I forced my way back out, leaving part of myself behind. My left hand was translucent now, like the ghosts. A fair trade. Rule 9. Call the homeless man, Carl. Give him coffee at 4 a.m. I found Carl's sleeping bag, but of course, Carl was gone, consumed by the hunger. But his wheelchair was still there. I kicked it over and shouted, "Your name isn't Carl. It was never Carl. You were James Morrison, the pianist's brother." The station shuddered. I was revealing truths that were supposed to stay hidden. Rule 10. Check bathrooms hourly. Mark locked stalls with chalk. I took the chalk and wrote on every surface I could find. The hunger is weak. The station is dying. Tom is already dead. Rule 11. No running after 2 a.m. I sprinted through the corridors. The hunger manifesting behind me, ahead of me, around me. It had given up all pretense now. It was just hunger given form, a void that consumed everything it touched. Rule 12. Put found items in lost and found. I gathered every personal item I could find and threw them onto the tracks. Wallets, phones, a child's teddy bear, someone's prosthetic leg. Each item had a ghost attached to it, and as they hit the electrified third rail, the ghosts screamed and dissipated into smoke. Rule 13. The east stairwell has different numbers of steps. I took a sledgehammer to the stairs, removing steps until the count was equal. The station bled more, its blood mixing with the century-old rust. Rule 14. Stand at platform position at 5:55 a.m. It was 11:20 p.m. 7 minutes until the solstice. I stood everywhere except where I was supposed to, dancing across the platform in defiance of the rule. Rule 15. The red button in the security office. I pressed it. Nothing happened at first. Then the evacuation alarm started, loud enough to wake the dead. Literally. Every ghost in the station materialized at once, hundreds of them, all looking at me with hope. Rule 16. Don't feed the not rats. I emptied my backpack of the food I'd brought, sandwiches, chips, candy bars, and threw it all into the tunnels. The things that emerged to feed weren't rats. They weren't anything that should exist. Inside-out things with human teeth and too many eyes. But they ate, and as they ate, they grew larger, bolder. Rule 17. Close eyes during red lights. I stared directly at the red lights as they all turned on at once. What passed through wasn't meant to be seen. It was the hunger's true form, the thing that existed in dimensions humans couldn't perceive. Looking at it was like having your mind turned inside out, but I kept watching. Rule 18. Don't engage with yourself. My doppelganger appeared, perfect in every detail except for its smile, which was too wide. "You're making a mistake," it said in my voice. "Take my place. Become the new keeper. Live forever." "Living forever in this place isn't living," I said, and embraced it. Touching my doppelganger was like touching antimatter. We both screamed as we began to cancel each other out. It dissolved, and I lost more of myself. My right foot was translucent now, like the ghosts. Rule 19. Answer payphone, say wrong number. The phone was already ringing. I picked it up. "I know who you are," I said before the voice could speak. "You're the hunger, aren't you? This has always been you, pretending to be our dead, trying to trick us." Silence. Then, "Clever mortal, but not clever enough. You have 3 minutes." Rule 20. Leave sandwich every third night. I took the ham sandwich I'd brought and ate it myself. The station convulsed like I'd poisoned it. Rule 21. Step only on yellow lines when floor becomes flesh. The floor was flesh now, raw and bleeding. I deliberately stepped off the yellow lines, my feet sinking into the organic mass. It burned, but I kept walking. Rule 22. Let maintenance Mike sign time card. Mike appeared, his hands writhing tentacles of wire and metal. I tore up my time card in front of him. He screamed in a frequency that shattered every piece of glass in the station. Rule 23. Recite stations when lights fail. The lights were strobing now, failing and returning rapidly. I sang 99 bottles of beer on the wall instead. The ghosts joined in, their voices growing stronger. Rule 24. Don't count the teeth. I not only counted them, but collected them. 37 human teeth scattered across the platform, each one representing someone the hunger had consumed. I arranged them in a circle and stood in the center. Rule 25. The special equinox solstice rule. A new rule materialized in my hand, written in blood. At the moment of solstice, offer yourself willingly to the hunger. 11:26 p.m. 1 minute. Instead of offering myself, I offered the contracts, both of them. I pulled out the CTA agreement and the older Chicago Tunnel Company binding, held them high, and as the clock struck 11:27, I tore them both in half. The station exploded, not with fire, but with light. Every ghost, every trapped soul, every consumed person erupted outward in a burst of pure energy. The hunger, exposed and unbound, shrieked as it was pulled back into whatever dimension it had come from. Without the contracts, without the rules, it had no anchor to our reality. I saw them all as they passed. Melissa, smiling and whole again. Carl James walking on real legs. The woman in yellow, her dress clean and bright. Even Tom, the real Tom, nodding his thanks before dissolving into light. The station itself was dying, the organic parts withering, the impossible architecture collapsing back into normal geometry. The third pillar crumbled, revealing a hole that went down, down, down into depths that were rapidly sealing themselves. But the hunger had one last trick. As it was pulled back, it grabbed me with tendrils of pure void. If I go, you go. I felt myself being pulled apart, my translucent parts already fading. This was the price. Someone always had to pay the price. Then hands grabbed me, dozens of them, the ghosts, not quite gone yet, holding me in place. Melissa's voice in my ear. The contracts are void. No one has to pay anymore. They pulled against the hunger, a tug of war between the living and the dead, and the thing that ate both. I felt myself stretching, tearing, coming apart at the seams of reality. Then someone else's hand, solid and warm. A living hand. Derek stood there, my cousin Derek, pulling me back toward the exit. "Man, you called me at midnight talking crazy, so I came to check on you. What the hell is happening?" "Pull," I screamed. He pulled. The ghosts pushed. And with a sound like reality itself tearing, the hunger lost its grip. The last thing I saw before Derek dragged me out was the hunger, being pulled into its hole, the station collapsing in on itself, and all the ghosts, finally, truly free, dissolving into points of light that rose through the ruined ceiling and into the night sky. Aftermath, the official story was a gas leak explosion. The Jackson station was closed for renovation that never seemed to end. They put up construction barriers, rerouted the trains, and after a while, people just forgot that there had ever been a station there. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital. The doctors couldn't explain my injuries. Partial transparency isn't a recognized medical condition. They settled on severe chemical exposure and pumped me full of things that didn't help but didn't hurt either. Slowly, over months, the translucent parts of me solidified again. Mostly, my left pinky finger never came all the way back, and in certain light, you can see through it to the other side. A small price to pay. The CTA sent me a check for $8,000, payment for workplace injury, and a subtle suggestion not to sue. I took it and didn't ask questions. But the story doesn't end there. 6 months later, I was working construction by then. Good, honest work in daylight hours. Derek had gotten me the job with his friend's company. We were renovating an old building in the Loop when I found it. A manila envelope tucked behind a loose brick addressed to M. Webb. Inside was a letter from Melissa, dated the night she disappeared. Marcus, if you're reading this, you succeeded where I failed. The station is gone, the hunger is banished, and we're all free. But I need you to know something. Chicago has more than one hungry place. The Jackson station was just the most obvious, the one that got too greedy. There's a hotel on North Michigan Avenue where guests check in, but their reflections don't check out. There's a warehouse in Cicero where the night shift packages things that shouldn't exist. There's a hospital on the south side where the morgue has been full since 1923, but they keep bringing bodies down. Each place has its own rules, its own hungers, its own contracts. The city is built on them, layer upon layer of agreements between our world and things that shouldn't be here but are. I'm leaving you a choice. The envelope under this letter contains addresses, contacts, people who know about these places. You can throw it away, live your normal life, pretend you never learned what lurks beneath Chicago's surface, or you can do what needs to be done. Someone has to know the rules. Someone has to make sure they're followed, or broken when necessary. The choice is yours. Melissa P.S. Check your left hand. If I'm right, you'll see a mark by now. The city has marked you as someone who knows. They'll find you eventually, whether you want them to or not. I looked at my left hand, the one that had gone translucent. There it was, a small symbol on my palm that hadn't been there that morning. It looked like a transit map, but the lines formed impossible. Patterns, routes that couldn't exist in three-dimensional space. The second envelope contained 5 addresses, 3 phone numbers, and a business card that simply read, Chicago Supernatural Containment Division, with no other information. I should have thrown it all away, should have burned it and never looked back. But that night, I got a call. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Mr. Webb. A woman's voice, professional but tired. This is Sandra Kim from St. Bernardine Hospital. We have a situation. Our night janitor quit after an incident. We need someone who understands special protocols, someone who can follow rules. I'm not interested. The pay is $40 an hour, cash. And Mr. Webb, the morgue is starting to overflow. The bodies from 1923 are getting restless. We need help. I hung up, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. A morgue that had been full for a century. Bodies getting restless. How many people would die if someone didn't maintain whatever rules kept them contained? 3 nights later, I took the job. St. Bernardine Hospital, Night 1. The hospital was a Gothic nightmare on the south side, all towers and gargoyles. Built in the 1890s, when architects thought buildings should look like castles. Sandra Kim met me at the employee entrance, a small woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much. You're Marcus Webb. Melissa Chang mentioned you in her notes. You knew Melissa? We all know each other, Mr. Webb. Those of us who keep the city's hungers in check. Chicago has always been a hungry city, built on a swamp, fed by slaughterhouses, growing on ambition and greed. That hunger attracts things that need containing. She handed me a clipboard. More rules. Of course. St. Bernardine Hospital. Morgue protocols. Night shift, 11 p.m., 7 a.m. Rule 1. The morgue has 50 drawers. Count them at the start of each shift. If there are more than 50, do not open the extra ones. Rule 2. Drawer 23 contains Mr. Emmanuel Richardson, died 1923. He will ask to be let out at 3 a.m. Tell him, not yet, Emmanuel, soon. Rule 3. The freezer temperature must stay at exactly 34 degrees Shiv. Not freezing, not warm. The in-between state keeps them calm. Rule 4. If you hear singing from the drawers, join in. They're lonely, not malicious. Rule 5. Dr. Morrison will do his rounds at 2 a.m. He's been dead since 1957 but doesn't know it. Treat him normally. Rule 6. Clean the autopsy table with blessed salt water. Supply closet, top shelf. Regular cleaners make the stains spread. Rule 7. The freight elevator goes to sub-basement. Free. There is no sub-basement free on the building plans. Do not investigate. Rule 8. If all the drawers open at once, run to the chapel on the 3rd floor. Stay until dawn. Rule 9. The bodies from the 1923 flu pandemic are in drawers 1530. They're waiting for something. We don't know what. Don't give them any reason to stop waiting. Rule 10. At sunrise, thank them all for their patience. They've been waiting a long time. Just 10 rules, I asked. The morgue is simpler than the station was. The dead here aren't malicious, just forgotten. The hospital was overwhelmed during the 1923 flu pandemic. Mass graves, no proper burials. The bodies in the morgue are the ones whose families never came. They're still waiting. Sandra's voice was soft. We could move them, give them proper burials, but every time we try, things go wrong. They want to stay together, so we keep them comfortable, follow the rules, and hope that someday they'll be ready to rest. The morgue was in the basement, accessed through a service elevator that groaned like it was in pain. The temperature hit me immediately. Exactly 34°C according to the digital thermometer on the wall. Cold enough to preserve, warm enough to, what? Keep them comfortable. 50 drawers lined the walls, each with a small placard showing a name and date. Drawers 1530 all showed dates from 1923. I counted them. Exactly 50. At first, I blinked, and there were 51. The extra drawer had no placard, just scratches that might have been numbers or might have been claw marks. I didn't open it. The first 2 hours were quiet. I mopped the floors with the blessed salt water, which smelled like the ocean and something else, something older. Cleaned the autopsy table. The stains looked like they were moving when I wasn't looking directly at them, and tried not to think about what was in the drawers. At 2 a.m., the door opened and Dr. Morrison walked in. He looked exactly like a doctor from the 1950s. White coat, head mirror, black medical bag. He was also slightly transparent, and his feet didn't quite touch the floor. "Evening, nurse," he said, mistaking me for someone else. "Any new arrivals?" "No, doctor. Quiet night." "Good, good. Let them rest. They've earned it." He walked to drawer 23, placed his hand on it gently. "How are you tonight, Emmanuel?" A voice from inside, muffled but clear. "Ready to go, Doc, so ready." "Soon, my friend. Very soon now." Dr. Morrison turned to me. Emmanuel was my first patient here. Tuberculosis. I promised I'd get him home to his family. Still working on keeping that promise. He made rounds to each drawer from 1923, speaking softly to each occupant. Some responded, some didn't. When he was done, he nodded to me and walked out through the wall. At 3 a.m. exactly, drawer 23 started rattling. "Please," Emmanuel's voice was stronger now. "It's been 100 years. My children are dead. My grandchildren are dead. Why am I still here?" I remembered the rule. "Not yet, Emmanuel. Soon. You always say that. Every night janitor for a century says that." The rattling stopped. "But thank you for saying it. It helps to know someone's listening." At 3:30, the singing started. It began in drawer 15. A woman's voice, soft and sweet, singing a lullaby I didn't recognize. Then drawer 16 joined in, a man's baritone. Then 17, 18, 19. Soon all 16 pandemic. Victims were singing in harmony. The song was beautiful and heartbreaking. Something about going home, about children waiting, about spring coming after the longest winter. I didn't know the words, but I hummed along as instructed. They seemed to appreciate it. The singing got stronger, more hopeful. When they finished, there was silence. Then, from drawer 20, a child's voice. "Thank you for listening, mister. No one's listened in so long." The rest of the night passed quietly. I counted the drawers obsessively. Sometimes 50, sometimes 51. Once I swear there were 52. The freight elevator descended to sub-basement 3 twice, though I never saw anyone call it. Each time it returned, it was colder. and there were wet footprints leading from it to the morgue that evaporated within minutes. At 6:50 a.m., I stood in the center of the morgue and spoke to the room. Thank you all for your patience. I know you've been waiting a long time. Someone remembers you. Someone knows you're here. The temperature rose 1 degree, just for a moment, but it felt like acknowledgement. Sandra was waiting when I emerged. You did well. They haven't been that calm in years. What are they waiting for? We think they're waiting for the last one. There were 43 deaths in that pandemic at this hospital. We have 16 bodies. The others were claimed, buried, moved on. But these 16 won't rest until all 43 are at peace. And somewhere out there, 27 ghosts are trying to find their way here. How long have they been trying? Since 1923. She handed me an envelope, $320 in cash. Same time tomorrow. I should have said no. Should have walked away. But I thought about Emmanuel, waiting 100 years for a promise to be kept. About the child in drawer 20, singing to anyone who would listen. Yeah, I'll be here. The pattern. Over the next 3 months, I worked at 5 different locations. Each had its own rules, its own trapped souls, its own hungers that needed managing. The Riverside Hotel had room 1408, where guests checked in, but only their bodies checked out. Their reflections stayed trapped in the mirrors, desperately trying to warn the next occupant. I spent 2 weeks there, following rules about which mirrors to cover when, which reflections were safe to acknowledge, which ones had gone rabid from isolation. The warehouse in Cicero packaged nightmares, literally. Dreams that had gone bad, fears that had taken physical form, memories that their owners had tried to forget. The night shift, 3 people, all of us marked by various encounters, would box them up and ship them to addresses that didn't exist, following rules about which dreams could touch, which fears needed refrigeration, which memories would try to escape and return to their owners. The abandoned school in Englewood, where the fire of 1958 still burned in room 203, and the children still attended class, not knowing they were dead. The rules. They were heartbreaking. Participate in their lessons, don't mention the outside world, never tell them that Mrs. Patterson, their teacher, had been trying to lead them out for 60 years. Each place had someone like Tom had been, a keeper, someone who'd been there too long, who was becoming part of what they guarded. And each place had a history of janitors, guards, night workers who'd learned the rules, followed them or broken them, survived or didn't. But I began to notice patterns. The same symbols appeared in different locations. The contracts all had similar language, similar loopholes, and they all mentioned something called the compact. It was Melissa who explained it when she visited me in a dream. The dream I was mopping the Jackson station, which was impossible because the Jackson station was gone. But in the dream, it was whole, clean, functioning. And Melissa was there, solid and real, sitting on a bench with a cup of coffee. You're not really here, I said. No, but also yes. Death is complicated when you die in a hungry place. Part of me moved on, but part stayed to recruit you, honestly. For what? Chicago needs keepers, real ones, not the possessed husks like Tom became. People who know the rules of multiple locations, who can spot when things are going wrong, who can prevent the hungers from spreading. She sipped her coffee. The compact was signed in 1871, right after the Great Fire. The fire wasn't an accident. Something got loose, something hungry for destruction. The city founders made a deal. They'd create controlled feeding grounds, specific locations where the hungers could be contained and fed in measured doses. In exchange, the rest of the city would be protected. And it works. Until it doesn't. The Jackson station got too greedy because Tom had been there too long, became too much a part of it. The morgue at St. Bernardine is stable because Sandra rotates the workers, never lets anyone stay more than 6 months. But there aren't enough of us who know, who understand. We need a network. You want me to help build it? I want you to lead it. She stood, and I could see through her slightly, see the station that no longer existed. You've been marked by multiple locations now. You can sense them. The hungry places. You can feel when the rules are being bent, when contracts are straining. Chicago needs someone like you. What if I say no? Then you say no, and eventually another Jackson station happens. Another hunger gets loose, and maybe next time there's no one there to stop it. She started to fade. The business card in your wallet. Call the number. They're waiting for you. I woke up in my apartment, hand already reaching for my wallet. The business card was there, though I didn't remember putting it there. The number was different than before, or maybe I was just seeing it correctly now. I called. Chicago Supernatural Containment Division, a familiar voice answered. Sandra, Kim, we've been expecting your call, Mr. Webb. The division. The office was in City Hall, basement level, behind a door marked Historical Archives, authorized personnel only. Inside was nothing like a government office should be. Too many shadows, too many corners, walls that seemed to extend further than the building's footprint should allow. Sandra was there, along with 6 others. I recognized one, a security guard from the Riverside Hotel who trained me on the mirror rules. The others introduced themselves, a librarian who managed books that wrote themselves, a train conductor who drove routes that didn't officially exist, a cemetery groundskeeper who kept the dead in their graves during the full moon, a social worker who helped ghosts find closure, and a priest who performed exorcisms for the city government. We're not official, Sandra explained. We can't be, but we're necessary. Every major city has something like us. New York has the subway shepherds, Los Angeles has the highway patrol, not the regular one. New Orleans has several organizations. It's complicated there. They showed me the map. Chicago, covered in red dots. Each dot was a hungry place, a location where reality was thin, where something from outside pressed against our world. There were dozens, maybe hundreds. We can't guard them all, the priest, Father O'Brien, said. We try to identify the most dangerous, establish rules, find people willing to work them. But some slip through. Some go unnoticed until it's too late. What do you need from me? You survived the Jackson station. More than survived, you broke it, freed everyone trapped there. That's unprecedented. Sandra pulled out a file. We want you to be a closer. When a location gets too dangerous, when the rules stop working, when the keeper goes bad, you go in and end it. Like an exterminator for supernatural infestations. More like a negotiator. Sometimes the contracts can be reworked. Sometimes the hungers can be relocated to less populated areas. And sometimes, she trailed off. Sometimes you have to break everything and hope you survive. Yes, I thought about it for all of 10 seconds. When do I start? The first assignment. The Graceland Cemetery had a problem. Not the whole cemetery, just one specific mausoleum, the Hartley family crypt. Built in 1888, it had been sealed since 1923 when the last Hartley died. But recently, groundskeepers had been finding it open in the mornings, despite multiple locks and security cameras that showed nothing. The cameras don't malfunction, Father O'Brien explained as we drove north. They record exactly what happens. Nothing. The door is closed at midnight, open at 6 a.m., and nothing happens in between. Reality just skips. What's inside? That's the problem. Every time someone goes in to check, they come out different. Subtle changes, a scar that wasn't there before, memories of events that didn't happen, knowledge of languages they never learned. The groundskeeper, Martinez, went in last week, came out speaking fluent Latin. He'd never studied it. The cemetery at night was eerily peaceful. Our footsteps on the gravel paths seemed too loud, echoing off headstones and monuments. The Hartley Mausoleum stood apart from the others, a small Greek temple designed with columns and a peaked roof. The door was solid bronze, green with age, and it was open. It shouldn't be open, Martinez said. He was a small man in his 60s, nervous energy radiating from him. I locked it at sunset. 3 padlocks, blessed chains, the whole routine. I approached carefully. The air around the mausoleum was wrong. Too warm for October, with a smell like summer grass and old books. From inside came a soft light, like candle flame, but steadier. Mr. Hartley wants visitors, Martinez said suddenly, in a voice not his own. His eyes had rolled back, showing only white. He's been so lonely since the family ended. He just wants to share what he's learned. What has he learned? I asked. Everything. Nothing. The spaces between seconds where eternity lives. Come in, come in. Tea is served in the library that doesn't exist. Martinez collapsed. Father O'Brien caught him, checked his pulse. He's okay, just unconscious. This happens every time someone gets close. I entered the mausoleum.